So date 12th June 2024. Time is this. Today we are going to see something called as state management. Means what? We will see. So here I will create a new folder, day 98. Terminal. Merge stack cd day 98. npm. Can you tell me the command?
npm create with accurate notice.
npm create or what? npm create with @latest. Hit the enter and react JavaScript, and it has created all these things. Okay, so cd react state clear, npm install. npm install. Okay, so node version problem. So let's delete this node modules. Delete the node modules. nvm use 18. That thing I've forgotten. Again npm install. Okay, npm install. So let's delete everything. That's whatever we don't need. App, react events, app.css, I don't need it. Index.css, I don't need it. Index.css, I don't need it. In app.jsx, remove all these things. Just remove this, remove absolutely everything. Correct? Index.css not required, remove it. Fine. So here let's open this much folder only. Merge stack, day 98 and react state. Okay. So here npm run dev localhost 5173. There is nothing. Okay. So what I wanted to do, simple counter program. So we have div style display flex, correct? And what I wanted to do, there is a one h1 and count, and there is a one input type button. Say okay, right? Input type button, say okay. and display direction, column, flex direction, right? Each column. So this is the button, this is the counter. Align items, align items, center. Okay, now if I click over here, the count should increment. So here, then you can tell me let CNT is equals to 0, and to the button on click is equals to CNT plus plus, correct? Or we can write a separate function, const handle click is equals to this function, and here we can make CNT plus plus, and instead of writing lambda here, let's refer it handle click, and then you can say console.log CNT, right? Open the inspector, say okay, 1, but, and let's do one thing here, let's make CNT, let's make CNT here 0. Can you see here thing is incrementing, but count is not getting incrementing over here. Can you see that?
Yes.
What is the concern? The thing is in the React component. React component says that if so, component should be the pure component. Component is what? Pure component, which means that whatever input has been given to the component, with that input, component is going to re-render. So if you want to show CNT over here, you need to increment the CNT and call this function again. You need to increment the CNT, call this function again. You need to increment the CNT, call this function again. Correct? If you want to do this thing, there is some mechanism, and that is something called as the state management. Component often need to change what's on the screen as a result of interaction. Typing into the form should update the input field, clicking the next on an image, the example they have given. Clicking a buy should put a product into the shopping cart. The components need to remember the things, that is the current value, current image, the shopping cart. In the React, this kind of the specific memory is called as state. So this need to be remembered, and function need to be called again. This needs to be remembered and function needs to be called once again, right? So this is what we have tried to do, something like this, a simple thing. Now if you just write a console over here, remember that this is a side effect. Writing console, say called app, okay, called app, refresh it. Can you see called app? This app is getting called 2 times. Now it is not getting called. So the value of this thing is getting called, and once the function is loaded, and that's why the 0 is not getting changed. So 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 is getting changed, but after you call 1, function should re-render, 2, function should re-render, 3, function should re-render. These things should happen over here, so that re-rendering part is not happening. But during the re-render, you need to remember the value of the CNT. During the re-render, you need to remember the value of the CNT. See now, the handle click event is updating the local variable CNT. But two things prevent that change from being visible on the screen. Local variable don't persist between the renders, and changes to local variables won't trigger the renders. Changes to local variable won't trigger the renders. To solve this, React has given something called as hook. Hook. Hook means a function intercepting the execution of another function. That is the hook. So this function is getting executed. In between, we need to intercept the execution and do something. That's why this thing is called as hook. So here you can say const. So instead of this CNT, what we can do, I can write CNT, set CNT. I will explain all the things, don't worry. Use state, and initial value of CNT is 0. Kindly explain me meaning of this line. Hello? Please explain me meaning of this line.
We can declare a CNT as a 0.
No, I want meaning of this line. I'm asking you, what do you mean? How do you see this line? What do you mean by this line?
We can give us two variables, CNT and state count.
Mm-hmm.
That is declared to the useState.
Declare to what?
useState. Assign to the.
What do you mean by only this much? So what the use state will return? What do you mean by this thing? You don't know what is a use state. First, agree that. You don't know what is a use state, but what is, you can tell me what use state is going to return and what is the meaning of this syntax.
useState return a count and state count.
What use state return?
Count and state count.
And if how can two things can be written? Can you write a function which return the two things? Your function can return only one thing, right? Then how you can say it is returning the two values? How one function can return two values?
So only one value can return.
Okay.
That is the increment the counting.
So what would be return type of use state? Please state me. Please tell me. Only this much answer I am expecting. What is the return type of use state? Use state. What would be the return type of use state?
That is return a count.
Okay, forget about that. Let me remove it. Now tell me what's the return type of use state.
That is array.
How come you say array?
We can counting the numbers.
So forget about the count. There is no count and anything. I just have written the use state.
So in the usage call the function, then count is increment.
What is the return type? Hello? So you can't answer what is the return type, right? There is a array is a return type. And what is this? You are not practicing means. So this is the destructuring symbol, right? It is actually returning an array. You can write something like this also. So the zeroth element will point to the state variable, and the first element will point to the function. First element will point to the function. So this function is used to update this value. It's a const. So you cannot directly assign variable. You cannot do cnt++ over here. If you want to change this value, you need to call this function. So useState is a hook which returns an array. useState is a hook which returns an array. Zeroth element is actually a state variable, and first element of the array is a function which is used to update the state, right? Which is used to update the state. Now you can say set cnt over here, and then cnt+1, whatever cnt is there. Set cnt will set the new value of the cnt. Set cnt will set the new value of the cnt. And what would be that value? Existing cnt+1. And here we have used the cnt. Now go here, refresh it. 1. Can you see called app? The component is getting called again. So what is happening? The state variable is responsible for, see, to update the component with the new data. Two things need to happen: retain the data between the renderers and trigger react to render the component with new data. So this data needs to be remembered. This data needs to be remembered. This data needs to be remembered, and this function needs to be re-rendered, which means that called again with the new data. And that's why now this thing is working. Correct? Any question?
No, sir.
Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
State, very important aspect of the React. Highly important aspect of the React. If you want to work in a React, so this is extremely important step you can consider. This is highly important. State management. Whatever you will do, whatever you want to do in your project, you have an array. Your which screen? Create new build screen. Dynamic builds are going to be added. How that will happen? That will happen by means of the state variable only. You need to manage the state in this way. So here if you see, adding the state variable, we have added the state variable. useState is something called as hook, right? This is the hook. In React, useState as well as other function which are starting with the use called as hook. If it is starting with hook, is called as hook. Hooks are the special functions. They are only available while React rendering, which we will see. There are different hook. They let you hook into the different React features. So this is execution is happening. Execution is happening. In between the execution, you need to intercept the execution. You need to intercept the execution and do the things that is going to happen with the help of hook. Okay. Now this, when you call useState, you are telling React you want this component to remember something. You want this component to remember something, right? Now this is a, whenever you look at, I ask you the syntax for this thing. I asked you syntax for this thing. This is a plain JavaScript. It has nothing to do with the React, right? It has nothing to do with the React. Hello?
Yes, sir.
So this syntax has nothing to do with the React. We can do this syntax in a plain JS also. Naming the array indices. So this is the 0 index. This is the first index, right? So all these things we have discussed. The state variable, we have discussed. What do you mean by state variable? State variable setter function, right? Now I want you to type this much code. Okay, I'll push this much code actually. React state management. And you will read this page completely. This page. This is the page you would be reading completely. Okay?
Yes.
Yeah. We'll meet tomorrow.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.